and odds, that's our deal. From underdogs to favorites, we break it down. Empty Field Podcast, the talk of the town. Empty Field, where we lay it all out. Breaking down games, removing all doubt. One interviews with stars, we bring in the heat. Sports news and odds, talk that can't be beat.
Welcome to another episode of the Empty Field Podcast. My name is Mathew Hansen, and today I have the voice of Fight For It, Dylan McGrath. Dylan, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Matt. Thanks for having me on. You've had a lot of my friends on and a lot of fighters on. I've been watching your stuff for a while, so it was really awesome to be invited.
Awesome. No problem, man. First off, tell us about yourself.
I'm 33 years old. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. Been living here for about 13 years. I've been training martial arts for 10 years this year, and I've been coaching martial arts for 3. I've been doing broadcasting or some form of commentary on one thing or another since high school, and that kind of lended itself very naturally when I started training. But I'm sure we will get into that. I love jiu-jitsu. I love MMA. Spent a lot of time watching fights. Obviously, I've commentated at this point like over 500 fights, so I like martial arts a lot. That's my thing.
What got you into martial arts?
So I was like a big guy in high school, got recruited to the football team, and then, getting injured in like the last year I played football, and also just never really being at a school that was on anybody's radar. I never really had the opportunity to play football in college. So before high school was even done, I started thinking about broadcasting. I really wanted to like commentate football on a professional level, but if you never play at a professional level, they tend not to hire you to do commentary either. So, I was still very competitive after that, and I wanted to get into something that I could like flex that muscle with. So I actually got into esports, like fighting games. That was kind of like my first thing that I commentated professionally. I commentated Super Smash Brothers Melee. That was probably the game I was the most famous for commentating. Commentated that on a professional level for about 10 years. Didn't make a lot of money, but got to travel a lot of the country and get into a lot of cool places and meet a lot of cool people. But as like you're doing the whole pro gaming thing and running around the country, you're not really taking care of yourself or your diet or anything like that. So one morning, being a guy who was about 215, 225 all through high school, one morning, about 10, 11 years ago, I woke up and I think I was probably like 370 pounds. And I was like, dude, I got to change something. So I've always been an MMA fan since probably UFC 100, or maybe the first time Brock fought Frank. That was one of the first like fights I really got exposed to. I've always loved watching the sport. So I kind of was like, well, maybe I can do something like that to lose weight. And I went to a place called Jawbreaker Boxing here in Raleigh. Still one of the like premier boxing gyms in the area, but I went there for a year straight, lost 150 pounds, and then signed up for jiu-jitsu. And the moment I signed up for jiu-jitsu at Elevate 10 years ago, it was like this thing became my whole life. I was doing stand-up comedy at the time as a hobby as well. And I just realized that I'll probably still be funny when I'm 50, but I won't be able to get punched in the head when I'm 50. So I put like everything I was doing in my free time in my life on pause, just to like throw myself into martial arts. And here's where we are now, man. 10 years later, it's like my whole life is kind of built around this thing.
Stand-up comedy. How is that?
It's really fun. It's fun if you have no problem making a fool of yourself. And I've never really had a problem being willing to do that. It's just so hard. It's one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing I've done besides MMA. I would say you have to be willing to go for it. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and embarrass yourself a little bit, but you also have to constantly be writing. You have to constantly be thinking. You have to constantly be like driving somewhere and thinking about a joke, and that's kind of how I am with MMA as well. Like I'll think about something randomly in the shower and be like, oh, I got to go add this to my coaching folder, or I got to go like research this on YouTube. So I think it's kind of like that aspect of comedy really helped me transition. And also doing commentary, I think a lot of people would say I'm entertaining even when the fight's not, so I think it's lent itself to being able to like kind of yap about anything and also keep the fans kind of like entertained during the downtimes that fight for it.
Awesome. So what's been your favorite part about learning like jiu-jitsu and MMA?
Well, dude, I'm sure we'll talk about this again. We talk about coaching, and we're definitely going to talk about it with some of the fighters later. But watching people, and it started with myself, like transform and find themselves. Like I didn't start training until I was like 23, 24 years old. So I kind of came into the game super late, but I watched a lot of people that were my age kind of start around the same time and watch them be completely different people, kind of find themselves, change their lives like late in their lives. But also you just see a lot of young people come in and go from boy to man or girl to woman, and you see people become confident and self-assured and like walk with pride, whereas they may have been like a little bit more reserved or like kind of turned inward. You start to see people kind of blossom when they get confident about something, and that's probably the coolest thing about learning any martial art, because even if you're learning like sword fighting or like fencing, that mastery of a skill, it gives you a lot of like confidence. And as long as you're willing to like master something over time, you will get that feedback, and especially when it's a physical activity where you're like sharing the mat with other people and learning more about people. Um, that's the other thing I love about martial arts, that as far as outside of the techniques and everything like that, it's opened my mind to meeting different types of people and being accepting of like all walks of life, and just because I see all walks of life on the mat. So
Then were you ever a fighter?
I definitely was I trained all the time, and the first 2 times I started to get ready to make my MMA debut, the first time I got knocked out or rocked in training when I was like getting ready to ask my coach like, "Hey, I think I might be ready for a fight." I got rocked in training really bad, and
No.
I had 2 concussions in high school that were tough from football. For me, getting rocked is like the scariest thing. Getting knocked out is almost easy. Getting like almost knocked out is like visiting death, and it's very scary to do that. So I came back from that, trained for like another 7 months. There's a guy I was training with a lot and like getting rounds in with a lot. I watched him fight and he got knocked out in like 8 seconds. And this is a guy who just like tooled me every day in the gym. So that's like, just all these like signs around me that I shouldn't fight. And then once again, started doing jiu-jitsu super fights, started getting really competitive, got in great shape, started to get this idea about taking a fight. And then I just destroyed my knee, had to have my knee rebuilt. By the time I came back from my knee surgery, I think I was 30, just turned 30, and I just love the training. I'm not a big person who gets a lot out of competing, even in jiu-jitsu. It's I like the testing myself aspect, but I've never been the person who like wants to get up and do every single competition for the sake of winning glory or winning a medal. And for me, that kind of like study and mastery aspect of it, just maybe because I got into it later, um, that was more important to me. But I've certainly sparred some hard ass rounds, and I did karate growing up. I did Kyokushin karate, and I got disqualified from several tournaments for sparring too hard, quote unquote, or going too hard in the tournament. So I definitely have always had fighting and martial arts like in the background of my life until like high school sports became like the main thing. I remember going between football season and the next year, I remember going to like wrestling camp and like maybe I'll try wrestling out. And then the first day I got there, they were like, "Okay, today you're gonna run 7.5 miles." And I was like, "I'll see y'all at football next year." Like I've never been, never been really into the running aspect. I wish I would have stuck with that because wrestling's always been my bane as a competitor as well.
So you didn't fight. So what was your first opportunity getting behind the mic?
For a martial arts event, I remember I went to go see my coach Cody fight. The first year I was training, he was still competing as a pro, and I went to go to the fairgrounds and watched his fight. And then I wanted to watch it back, so I came home and I bought the pay-per-view. And I was listening to the guys on the mic at that show, and I won't say who they are because one of them's like super famous now. But I was like, man, if these guys can do this and get paid for it, I can definitely do this, because I had this like slight education in broadcast journalism and broadcasting, and I had also been doing it on a different platform for 10 years. And I think people get a little surprised when I say this, but esports like Tekken, Melee, Street Fighter, those things, those audiences are so much bigger than the amateur to even high level MMA. Like only the UFC has a bigger audience than those things I talked about. So I was kind of used to performing in like higher viewer count environments or higher pressure environments. And I remember Fight for It was kind of like a rinky dink promotion, I would say, at the time, first 4 shows, and they were taking like a year off between shows, but suddenly they come back and they want to do like 3 or 4 shows a year. And I remember asking them if I could commentate, and they were like, "Well, we have somebody booked for this show, but if you want to come out and check out the show and operate a camera, you can do that." So I went to Fight for It 4. I was a camera operator and I did the fight interviews. That was like kind of one of the ways I first broke into the fight game too, is I was doing a lot of fighter interviews at the event, like before the fight and after the fight. And I remember operating that camera and just looking across and being like, man, I want to commentate this thing so bad. And then the next show, they invited me to be a commentator on Fight For at 5. And that was my first show with them. Like I said, 7 years ago, 22 shows later, here we are.
How nervous were you for that first event?
I was a little nervous because it's obviously something that I have experience in, but one of my biggest fears, and I know I said I was willing to embarrass myself earlier, one of my biggest fears is talking out of my ass or just saying like straight up incorrect information, whether it's about a fighter or about a fight or nowadays that I'm a coach, especially a technique. But my job back then was very simple. My job was to feed the other person that I was with the info and read the ads and just be like the John Anik type, keep things light, keep things entertaining. And I think that the thing that makes me feel less nervous was the fact that I had two really cool co-commentators for my first time doing this. It was Al Simmons, who ran Fight Fight Lab for many years. He was commentating with me during kickboxing, and he's just like a character, super funny guy, been in the fight game forever, knows everybody. And so he like knew the down low on all the coaches. And then Tony Loco Soto was my co-commentator for MMA, now famous bare knuckle fighter. And if you've listened to his interviews or if you had the pleasure of training with Tony, you know that he's an extremely funny, entertaining guy, and he definitely lightened that mood a lot. He and I had really good chemistry. He and I ended up doing Fight For It together for quite a while.
Awesome. Now, how much preparation goes into a fight card? Say this card coming up on Saturday. How much preparation goes into it?
When I'm trying to get a job, I tell them 10 plus years of training and fighting and all this other stuff. But in reality, once I have an idea of who's on the card, if it depends on some of the guys I have notes for, like I have a note section in my phone that's just about Osvaldo, one that's just about Dylan. Every time they fight, I add to that. I do a lot of tape study, especially if we get a guy who's got a record but fights from outside the promotion. It can be kind of hard to track down those fights or track down those videos, since Fight For It kind of has a more organized fight catalog, like a place where you can go and see every fight they've ever done. Most promotions aren't like that. They'll contract this streamer for this show and that streamer for that show, and you kind of got to go to all these different places to find the videos. But I would say hours wise, if there's 34 fights on a card, I'm thinking 34 to 40 hours of preparation and just like my notes, and I'm adjusting my notes and my spreadsheets and stuff like that. And just it can also depend like on Fight For It, because we have such a long tenured history of kind of pulling from the same teams, the same talent pool. A really nice thing is like, even if somebody's making their debut, if I've commentated like 3 or 4 fighters from that gym, I have a lot to talk about. Even if I don't know anything about this person other than their name, their height, and where they're fighting out of, I can tell you like what kind of training they're getting. Because I'm one of the only people that does this aspect of it, and I think this is kind of rare, but I will go to any gym and go train with the guys or the girls. I travel up and down NC a lot because my family lives in South NC and I live in North NC, so I'm always driving back and forth. So I've gone to a lot of these gyms and met the trainers and met the athletes and met the coaches and picked the coaches' brains and stuff like that. It gives me more and more and more to talk about, but it also gives me that depth of like overall knowledge about the local area. And when you're doing a show like this, your job is to like tell the story of the individual fighters, but it's also to tell the story of this like blossoming region and promotion. Because as Fight For It has grown, I genuinely believe that the North Carolina, South Carolina scene in martial arts and the awareness of it has grown as well. And some of that has to do with Taylor and Tony and even Brian Battle winning the Ultimate Fighter. There's all these like kind of more eyes on us now. But if you watch Fight For It numbers over the years, they've gone up and up and up as well.
Awesome. Now what's the hardest part about calling a fight live?
Not getting too caught up in the moment. Sometimes, and ever since they started doing the commentator cams for Fight For It, I noticed this more and more. But sometimes if like there's a grappling sequence or there's something where I need to see, but the monitor can't quite give me what I want, I'm like looking, I'll just go a long time without talking. Like that's kind of like the hardest thing, is like being so into the fight that you forget what your job is for a little bit. And then the fights where I'm predicting like Osvaldo and Dylan, there will be so much happening, especially in those early opening seconds, that just calling what's happening, I'm not gonna be able to verbally do that. So I just have to like translate as much as I can as fast as I can.
You mentioned about being able to embarrass yourself. What's the most embarrassing part about being a commentator, as well as your most embarrassing event that you've had?
Well, that's a great question. Um, I would say I definitely embarrass myself more often than not doing Smash, just because like in Smash, it's like a big meritocracy where your value of your opinion is almost directly based on how good you are. And I was a national level commentator, but I was only a regional level competitor. And so I kind of like would make a fool of myself by just not knowing enough. Whereas with Fight for It and MMA, the thing that I do that embarrasses myself more than anything, I would say, is if somebody gets hurt or knocked out or clipped while I'm like looking at my notes app on my phone, because I know Fight For It's going to post the video of the knockout and they're going to be posting the commentary reaction, and people are thinking this guy's just playing on his phone. But I'm looking at like the notes of the fight and going like, okay, yeah, Osvaldo's going back to that left hook entry that he used in the last fight, that kind of thing. Or I think one of the single most embarrassing thing was one time the Jason, our producer, had accidentally swapped the red corner and blue corner names, and I didn't know either guy. And this was probably like Fight for It X, actually, where we came back from the pandemic. So everybody was new to me. For the entire fight, I called them the wrong name. And even still
No.
in perpetuity forever in the video archive, I'm calling these guys the wrong name forever. So there's no way for me to go back and correct it or anything like that. So that's probably the worst one, especially if one of those guys went on to be like a pro fighter or like, was in the UFC and that became like a thing that people found online. Like Brian, people always talk about Brian Battles, like head kick of him getting knocked out as being like this thing that keeps coming back up, keeps coming back up. I imagine something like that will happen to me. The most embarrassing thing for Smash, and I'd have to tell this story just because it's like literally one of the things I'm most famous for, was I was doing this event called an Arcadian. If you think about it, like an amateur style event instead of a pro event, I never went to the pro level in that game. I was in the top 3 finals of this game. And if you know how Smash works, I hit the guy off the stage. He's way off the stage. Like nobody should be able to survive this. So I like jump up and like I'm celebrating. He gets back to the stage and kills me in the finals of the final match. And the name of the YouTube video is like "Don't celebrate too early" in Melee or something like that. But I'm literally at Evo, which is like the fighting game hub, the fighting game mecca of the world, sitting there playing the slot machines in between my matches, and someone goes, "Hey, aren't you the guy that celebrates too early?" And so
Ah,
it just like a total stranger caught me in Vegas, miles and miles away from home. So those two things definitely set the precedent and set the stage.
what are your goals as a commentator?
I would say to go as far as I can and push as hard as I can. There's a lot of guys that I think I'm on the next level down from, a Sean Wheelock or a Cyrus Fees. These guys, TJ, they do these shows that are right below the UFC level. I'd love to get on like a subversive jiu-jitsu show or a Fury cage grappling show. I think just breaking out right now of the North Carolina, Virginia area is one of my main concerns. But yeah, my ultimate goal would be to work for the UFC one day.
Um, okay. What what made you want to become an instructor?
Good, very good question. So I was doing the commentary thing. I had just come back from knee surgery and just started training again. And my best friend at the time, Trevor, was opening Hometown Martial Arts. And whether because he just couldn't find anyone who he really vibed with on the MMA grappling side of things, or he just needed like someone to teach the grappling aspects of it, he and I had done a lot of commentary. And he had pulled me aside and said, "You can speak to great detail about the sequences and what's happening in these grappling sequences in MMA, and the way you speak about them, I know you could teach them." And he was the person who really taught me that like what teaching is, especially for physical things like martial arts, is how can I demystify this? How can I take this thing that looks like something no normal person could do and translate it in a way where it can be palatable for like a 40-year-old soccer mom? And how can I get her to do this technique in a class? And that for me was like the turning point, because that's all I do in commentary. All I do in commentary is try to demystify and educate. And then the other thing is I'm building the fighter's legacy. I'm telling their story. Like if I can find out a reason why a fighter is fighting, or if I can find out like what drove them to start training, or even what they do when they're not training. These are all things that I can tie back into the fight and like make people attach themselves to that person. Like if somebody hears me on commentary go, "Yeah, when this guy's not fighting, he's a police officer in Durham County," they go, "Wait, hold on, I'm a police officer," or "My dad was a police officer," or whatever the case may be. There's this thing that ties them mentally to that athlete, and they start following the careers. And that's like my goal ultimately, is to get as many eyes on them as possible.
Awesome. Now, you are the voice of Fight for It. How do you handle the critics? People that give you negative stuff like, "Oh, you were on your phone while that knockout happened." How do you handle that?
The worst for me, the worst feedback you always get is from moms and dads, coaches and fighters. That's in that order, right? I think and I probably will get some hate for this, but anybody who's actually trained for like a decade knows this to be true. Fighters are very physically tough. They're the most physically tenacious and tough people that are walking the earth. And a lot of them, a bulk of them, are also mentally tough. But I would say also a bulk of them are not very emotionally tough and secure. And that's something that I think, if you're actually super good as a martial artist, you are that, because you kind of know yourself. And when I'm commentating a fight, it's the second to second. Like I'm gonna fuck up a lot, because I'm just reacting to what I'm seeing in front of me. If the job was to watch the fight and then go back and commentate it, where I could edit it and change things, I would make less mistakes and I would be able to see the fight through a less biased lens. But I'm always seeing the fight through the lens of the moment. And unlike most people that are watching the fight, I can watch more than the video. I have the video that the people at home are seeing, and I can also see what's happening in real life right in front of me. So I think that, I'll give an example. Maddox Went's father, who I love, he had his first fight with Fight for It in Raleigh a couple years ago. And Maddox's dad was there at the event, but he went back and watched the fight after. And at the next event I did, I'm like walking back towards the booth. This huge guy comes out of nowhere and like taps me on the shoulder. And he's like, "Hey, I got a bone to pick with you." And he wasn't being super aggressive, but he was just like reading me like the riot act on why I was like biased and why I thought that like I was wrong about who I thought won the fight. Because Fight for It does encourage me to kind of give my opinion on the fights in the moment, and even go so far as to say like, I think the judges got that one wrong, or I don't agree with that decision. They like really push me to do that, because that gets people who feel the same way at home like some sort of vindication, but it also creates like controversy as well. And they're not a stranger to that as well. So and I've been working with commissions long enough to know that they make mistakes. We watch UFC, we see that they get fights wrong all the time. Judging fights is really hard. But yeah, I would say that now Maddox's dad, when I see him at an event, we're all smiles and handshakes, and I explained myself to him, same thing. It's moment to moment. It's in the moment. I would explain to him that I'm a big fan of Maddox. And usually after that initial moment of interaction and feedback, where I kind of accept it, I never reject it outright. I never reject anything that people are sending me. Or I never don't open the message requests if somebody is, I know, having a problem with my commentary, because I do want to know, and it helps me, kind of adjust in the future. And so I would say that's one of the issues that you run into. But everybody that I've dealt with it, it's like now anybody who's actually approached me and brought it up to me in real life, now I'm like super tight with them, and comparatively, and I'm like able to go over there and ask them about like how this camp went and like what they expect from tonight's fight and all this stuff. And again, that gives me something else to talk about when Maddox finally walks out there.
Oh, yeah. Now, here comes rapid fire. So first thing that comes to your mind when I ask the question, would you rather be an instructor or do commentary?
Oof. Commentary, because I could do it if I lost my legs. If I get hit by a truck, if I was in a wheelchair, commentary, as long as I can speak.
Okay. Would you rather watch a knockout win or a submission win?
I like submissions myself. I'm more into the jiu-jitsu side of things, and it's also where I get to spend the most time talking. So I'm going to say submissions, just because, especially at the amateur level, not all of them get knocked out the way Osvaldo knocks them out. Usually when somebody gets finished in an amateur fight, it's either extremely one-sided, or it's like you were expecting that to happen 5 minutes ago and it just took longer. Sometimes they drag out, whereas a good submission, that's what it's supposed to do. A good submission is supposed to slowly constrict and suck the life out of someone. And the whole time it's happening, typically, I'm waiting for those little details. I'm waiting for, when somebody's doing RNC, I'm waiting for their elbows to start coming apart. That's how I know they're like applying the pressure and that they're finishing, basically. So I get really locked in on the submissions.
Okay. Would you rather watch a striking battle or a grappling battle?
Oof. I don't think that I love commentating jiu-jitsu. But if I know two grapplers are going to go at it in MMA, I'm usually more curious about how they're going to use that to nullify each other rather than like how they're going to just do a jiu-jitsu match with gloves on. So I'm going to say striking battle.
First round finish or a late round war?
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I like a late round finish or a late round war. Sometimes when there's an early finish, best example, Brent Williams or Dylan Williams, fight for it 9, I think. That fight ended too early, and it was stopped too early and ended too early, and I'd really love to see that again. I'd rather see the fight play out over 3 to 5 rounds because I love to see how the guys adjust. I love to see the changes between round to round. I love to try and listen to the corner advice, or at least lip read the corner advice if I can. Get some kind of idea of, one, if the game plan was working, and two, if it wasn't working, what are they adjusting? So I'm going to say 3-round war. The narrative is much better for me.
Perfect. One word that describes your commentary career.
Lucky. I've been very lucky. I think I kind of got into broadcasting and got credentialed in broadcasting thinking I would be into this one sport, and then it never came to fruition. I kind of thought that I had wasted my time developing this skill set. And that was one of the reasons why I got into comedy. But now that, I'm lucky that I found martial arts. I'm lucky that I got in shape. I'm lucky that I fell in love with it, and I'm lucky that I get to do it for fun, for money, and sometimes for free. But it's mostly for fun.
One word that describes your commentary style.
Um, color. I think that in the booth, I'm the play-by-play guy. I'm the John Anik, but I add the comedy. I add the out of fight, out of pocket comments, and try to keep it very colorful and entertaining. So I would say colorful.
Awesome. And then one word that describes you.
Oh man, tough. I would say my ultimate word that I would use to describe myself again, at the end of the day, I would say lucky. But if I had to pick a different word, since I used that one already, I would say my overall personality is, it's like a hyphenated word, but I would say laid back. I'm very laid back. I've had a lot of serious stuff happen to me in my childhood, and that just kind of made me not take much things seriously as an adult. But I like to think that I bring levity and bring some laughs to otherwise troubling situations.
Awesome. Any special shout outs you want to give?
Yeah, it's my first time, doing a show with Fight For It and cornering. I've cornered hometown fighters in the past. This is my first time being on the team Elevate, and we have a lot more fighters than I'm used to. So I'm very much looking forward to the fight team's efforts paying off. I've watched these guys. We're going to talk about this card here in a second. I've watched these guys kind of change from looking at them as a commentator and an analyst. Now I'm getting the inside scoop on all of them. So shout out to Jordan, shout out to Caleb, shout out to Isaac. I don't even think Isaac's fighting on this card anymore. Devin, a lot of these guys got their blue belts recently, and I couldn't agree more that they're ready to take that next step. So I'm excited to see how it comes to fruition. And shout outs to Cody Malte out of Elevate MMA Academy for taking care of me for the past 10 years and giving me a room where I could become myself, and then seeing enough in me to call me back to that room to come teach meant a lot to me. So shout outs to him.
Cool. Where can everybody find you on social media?
Instagram's probably the easiest thing to hit me up on. I'm pretty active on there when it comes to MMA stuff. That's my main tool for connecting with MMA people. So Instagram is Mr. Ben Ready. Also, I'm on YouTube and Facebook. I'm not active on YouTube or anything like that. So if you have something you want to say, or if you want to get in touch with me for a conversation, for sure hit me up on Instagram.
Stop. Before we continue this episode here, are you staying hydrated? No. Have you tried Hydrify? Man, it's not just flavored water. It's clean hydration with electrolytes that actually work. No sugar crash, no junk ingredients. Pretty simple. Hydrify keeps you sharp and fueled for the day. I use it because, man, it's simple, effective, and it just tastes real good. Hydrate smarter, hydrate better. That's Hydrify. Use promo code MTF to get 10% off your order. Just say, hey, Matt from the Empty Field Podcast sent you.
Perfect. like you said, we'll be talking about the Fight for It 27 card. Let me pull it up. If you are watching on the video, you can see the card as we discuss it. Let's start off right there. We'll start off with we're not going to give predictions. We're not going to say who we're going to win or lose. We just want to talk about the fights.
Yeah, absolutely. And these final 3 kickboxing fights you're going to see on this show are definitely worth attending and worth paying close attention to. We've got Terrence Starby taking on Christian McGrath. Christian is a former Fight For It champion. He's one of my favorite guys to watch when he is able to do his thing. He's had some injuries. He's had some setbacks. This is his first fight back with Fight For It in quite a while. Terrence is a very proven kickboxer, and I kind of think he's the type of fighter who will give Christian the looks that he wants in order to like kind of get his style going. But I also think that because Christian's mostly fought on Fight For It, there's a lot of footage on Christian out there. And in the last 2 fights I've watched, it seems like whoever he was going against really had his timing and style pinned down from that video. So I'm looking to see a switch up in Christian McRae in terms of like how aggressive he is. I'd like to see more aggression early on. And he's got a great boxing coach in his corner, head coach Todd Monroe from Matrix MMA. Hard gym, they train hard, they work hard, and their boxing is on the next level. So you can definitely expect Christian to, I think he's going to probably bring a little bit more boxing where he stayed a little bit longer previously. I'm hoping to see him a little bit more active in the pocket.
Looks like Clay Johnson and Matt, is it Hubin?
Hubin, yeah. Matt Hubin's out of Hayastan. I've been commentating Hayastan fighters since I started doing this thing. They're one of the strongest teams in the area. Hubin, since he came on the scene, has been nothing but impressive, nothing but all gas, no brakes. And then Clay, who is a Fight For It favorite. I'm very close with James from the TKO team, his coach, and he coaches with us at Elevate as well. And Clay's a special guy, and Clay gets the fans invested in him. And I think that he will need to operate a little differently against Matt. I think he'll need to gain respect from Matt very early because it's kind of hard to stop Matt from coming forward. Clay's struggled with that a little bit in the past, like people just straight up overwhelming him. So I'm interested to see what kind of tools he's brought back, because the last fight he had outside of Fight For It, I was watching it. It seemed like he was using the front kick a lot and keeping the guy off of him. And I think that's what he's going to have to do against Matt. They're going to have to circle. He's going to have to use the front kick and the jab, and he's going to have to earn respect by hitting him powerfully. Otherwise, Matt is going to come straight forward like a freight train, and he's going to be throwing the whole time.
I was down at Fight For It 25, and we watched Clay there, and the what he stands for and what he supports is amazing.
Yeah, and that's, I would say that he's a shining example of how far you can go if you're willing to put yourself out there and embarrass yourself. Like, it's probably not easy for him to start talking about the fact that, he fights mainly because he is autistic, and people maybe told him he shouldn't at first. And now it's his passion and his love. And you can see, even watching him in the gym, he's come to visit us at Elevate. You can just see he's talented, but I've met a lot of talented guys. I've not met a lot of guys who are willing to like talk openly and with like a open heart about why they do this and why it's like not the easiest thing in the world, but they still do it. So I'm a big fan of Clay on that level, and I really respect him as a martial artist. The spinning attacks, I don't know if he's going to be able to set up any of those spinning attacks, but he's got a lightning fast hip turn, and his switch kicks are brilliant. So I'm looking forward to seeing the speed versus the power. I think that's what we're going to be witnessing.
Awesome. The next fight, Robert Worthington and James Park.
Yeah, Worthington, Stretch is more of the veteran here and definitely has the fight experience. James looked like a different guy last time I saw him. Like, I was already kind of really impressed with James Parks previously out of Top Martial Arts. And since he regained that heavyweight strap, I think he's looked in better shape. He's looked faster. He's looked cleaner. He's looked meaner. I think if there's a kickboxing fight on this night where I'm thinking that either guy could finish each other, it's in this fight. You got to watch the leg kicks of Parks. His leg kicks are devastating. He can make you quit.
Perfect. Then that leads us right into the MMA. Isaac Yan and Charles Young.
Love both these guys. I love the personality that emanates from both these dudes. Like Isaac, from the moment he walks through, even when he's taking his picture for the poster, He just radiates this like non-seriousness. And when you're fighting somebody in a locked cage, even at the amateur level, that is just radiating that kind of aura, it can mess with you a little bit. It can take you out of your game to have somebody like kind of smiling and dancing and laughing and all this stuff. Isaac's very scrappy. I wouldn't say he's the most technical fighter in the world, but he's from a very technical school, a school that's really well known for their wall wrestling ability and their grappling ability, and he'll need it in spades against Charles Young. Charles is a phenomenal wrestler, a phenomenal control artist. He understands the basic principles of how to make MMA grappling effective, which is control and pressure. He doesn't separate a lot for ground and pound. That's probably the one thing I'd like to see more from him, but he's looked very, very unbeatable so far. He's made every fight look pretty easy. Isaac's going to be the hardest guy he's ever fought. He's also going to be the hardest to put away. But I do know that Charles is like, he's obsessed. He's also got a lot of personality, but he's a very hard worker in the training room. And he comes with a background and a skill set that like set him up for success from his first day in the training room. And if somebody actually is a wrestler out there and you want to transition to MMA, you won't see a lot of guys transition as successfully as Charles Young or Musso, Caleb Ray. You won't see a lot of these guys transition as effectively with the wrestling. So I would definitely pay attention to Charles Young if that's something you're looking to do as an amateur fighter. He's done it extremely well for 4 amateur fights in a row.
Awesome. Now, Tyler Smith is making his MMA debut versus Fazwa. I'm going to butcher that last name.
Bisuzu.
Good thing you're the commentator here.
Fawaz trains out of Arrow MMA. This is Arrow MMA's Fight For It debut. Head coach Evan Arredondo out in Cary, North Carolina. They have come on the scene in the last year or so, maybe a little longer that they've been open. I can tell you that out of every coach I've ever been around, at least in this area, no one has been in more higher level rooms or gone with more higher level people than Evan. Evan's fought on Combate Global. He's been in the room with Kamaru Usman. He's been in the room of these practices with Justin Gaethje. He's trained with Corey Sandhagen. He has trained with the who's who when he was pursuing an active fighting career. And then he came back home a year and a half ago and immediately was like, I'm starting a gym. And every time I've been lucky enough to see a practice of his or have him come into the gym when I was at hometown, I just thought like, this is another level of instruction. This is another level of experience. So if there's anybody who can take that 0-2 and turn it around for Fawaz, it's under the leadership of Evan. And Tyler Smith, don't know anything about him, obviously, but I can tell you, like I said earlier, if somebody's fighting out of a gym that I'm familiar with, I can tell you a little bit about the gym. Anik MMA is the Fight For It gym. That was the original gym that Fight For It started out of. Jonathan Samey is still owning it, I believe. And they have always had an active fight team of a few guys. And one of those guys, who's I assume now the head coach, is Josh Crouch, former Fight For It multiple time kickboxing champion. They are always picking tough guys to represent them, and they are always not looking for an easy fight. A lot of times you get on these promotions that are tied to a certain gym or a certain name. You'll be like, damn, why is that gym just got all these give me fights? I've never seen Atlantic MMA Fighter in an easy fight ever. Like I've always seen them kind of match their guys into some of the hardest guys. So they probably think pretty highly of Fawaz from the video. And obviously Fawaz is a little bit older. And usually these guys from Atlantic MMA are young, early 20s at the oldest type of guys. So I think you're going to see a different Fawaz. He's never fought for a Fight For It, but if you go back and watch his 2 previous fights, that's not the same guy I see on the footage.
Okay. And then 2 other fighters are making their debut. It looks like Damon Hughes and Brian Castro.
Damon Hughes would be making his debut. Unfortunately, he made it after this list was made. Last Saturday, he debuted and got a first round finish. Damon, I know very, very well. I was there the first day he walked into the gym at Hometown Martial Arts. And from the first moment he stepped onto the mat and started moving around, Trevor said, we got one here. And he's not a guy who says that about most people. He's kind of hard to impress. But Damon Hughes has always been impressive. He has an extremely tight wrestling game, and his frame and his body for 170, you would never believe this guy can make 170 looking at him on the scale. But he's a tenacious competitor, one hell of a wrestler. But because he's out of that Hometown Martial Arts gym, he's focused in on striking. with Trevor. Trevor's probably the best striking coach in the area, and he's made Damon into a scary prospect for an amateur, especially for a one-fight amateur. And we've had Damon into Elevate to spar with our guys. I think he's pretty special. And Brian Castro, making his debut out of Alliance Jiu-Jitsu, this is one of those times where I'm not seeing many Alliance guys come out and sign up for a fight. I don't even know if this guy's going to be cornered by the Alliance coaches or if he has an MMA coach. To my knowledge, they don't have an MMA program there. So I'm really, really curious to see what he's going to bring to the table. If there's one area in which Damon could potentially suffer, it's the awareness of the jiu-jitsu techniques from the bottom. But I'll tell you, he's one of those guys who feels impossible to hold down. It feels like trying to hold down a wild cat, like a big mountain lion or something like that. It's tough.
All right. Next fight, Jared Novas versus Nelson Melendez.
We're getting into the good stuff now. These are you're gonna, as we go down this card, you're gonna start to see guys who are a little bit more familiar to Fight For It fans, but you're also gonna see more anticipated matchups among the early fighters in the debuts. So with Jared Novas, Battleborn, BJJ, and MMA, Battleborn to me, one of the most effective gyms at training people to fight in MMA. I've never seen a Battleborn fighter debut or otherwise that I didn't think was ready to fight. And that's kind of rare. You know, everybody has those people that slip past them and look like $1 million in the training room, but then under the bright lights, they don't quite look the same. But that is not the case with Battleborn. Jared, I've seen fight a couple times, and they always are going back to the well on similar techniques. They're so good on the wall. They're so good with outside and inside trip. You got to watch your back, that not getting backed up. And if Nelson Melendez has had one issue in his Fight For It career, it's been when his back has touched the fence. So you're going to have to really watch Jared as they close in on that fence wall.
Okay. And then we got, looks like Michael Williams and Sam Sologo.
Yeah, Sam's a Fight For It veteran. He might have more Fight For It fights than most people. Maybe Brent Williams has a little bit more. And Dagan Williams out of Atlantic MMA, this is his third fight and also his third fight on Fight For It. This is a very interesting fight that I feel like could go either way. Sam's one of those guys you can't underestimate. I've seen him knock people out. I've seen him get arm bars. I've seen him get triangles and rear naked chokes. So he's got a skill set that's kind of all over. Like, he's a good fighter in every little area for an amateur. And Dagan, I've really only seen the wrestling be a strength for him. So he will need to try and find a way to get Sam down, which is not an easy task. And he'll need to avoid the cross of Sam Sologo, because Sam's kind of one of those unassuming guys too. Like, if you saw him in the grocery store checkout line, you might think to yourself, I can take this guy. But he's got a rocket for a right hand cross, and he's also not a bad grappler at all. So definitely keep your eye on Sam Sologo. He used to, if you want to look up some footage of him when he married his wife, he took her last name. But if you go back, you can look up Sam Marlar. You'll find a ton of kickboxing fights and a ton of MMA fights for Sam under the Fight For It banner.
Awesome. Next fight is Zakura Ruto versus Steven Torres.
Yeah, Zakia Ruto. And when Zakia first came into the gym, I was calling him all kinds of things. I was calling him Zakaya. I was calling him Zakia. It took me a long time, but yeah, Zakia is one of those guys who is really young, and every time I see him moving around, he looks a little different. He changes a lot with his style from every time he goes out there. He's done a few semi-ams. I was coaching him for one of his semi-ams. He's a very scrambly kid, and he's so good at getting on your back. I think Steven Torres is going to have some trouble keeping Zakia off of the back. And Zakia is a really long, thin guy with a very straight and crispy jab. So expect him to come in with some of that feinting that Hometown Martial Arts is known for, some of that volume that Hometown Martial Arts is known for. But Team Rock is the most proven gym in the Carolinas. They've been around the longest. They've done the most fights, and every card, as you do more and more of these, you'll see that there's not a single card in the Carolinas that happens without a Team Rock fighter on it. So they've seen it all. They've done it all. And if anybody can get you prepared for a fight against a high volume striker, it's Snake out of Team Rock.
Perfect. Next one would be Ned Burgess versus Zamian Williams.
This is the fight that breaks my heart the most to see on the card, guys. I trained both of these guys. I train with Ned now at Elevate and have been watching him since he made his kickboxing debut on Fight For It. I've been with Zamian, or Z, since the first time he came into the gym. And this is another one of those guys that has a very special skill set, but in one area. Zamian has always been, from the first time he walked in, he's always understood how to control himself, how to have timing and how to wait and how to not go super hard. A lot of people have to be broken of that. A lot of people have to be broken of their fighting spirit and learn how to train. He knew how to train from day one, and he was a guy who, let's say he was off work and hometown was open, we would have maybe 5 or 6 classes in one day. He'd be at all of them. And because he was so capable of training light and not going hard, he was able to do a ton of classes super early on, and he made up for a lot of his skill set gaps very early and very fast. Him and Zakia came up together, and they both did semi-ams under us, and they both looked great. Zamian is extremely good at body shots. You're going to have to watch the body shots. And Ned is also a very pretty, we'll say, kickboxer. They both have very pretty styles, but I think Ned's going to try to clinch him up, and I think Ned's going to try to slow the action down a little bit, because when Ziggy or Zamian is allowed to just sit there and get comfortable and just start dancing, it's pretty hard to stop him once he gets into the flow.
Perfect. Now let's get the women involved. We got Kirsten Pack. Is it Pack?
Yep, Kirsten Pack.
Versus, how do you even say her name?
Yexelin Bazin out of Gorilla MMA. That is the girlfriend of Mr. Brent Williams, who's also on this card. Kirsten Pack, I have not seen her fight live unless she was on one of the conflicts that I did previously. I couldn't find any video archive of that. She's out of Jason Fagler's school, who produced Malcolm Wellmaker to the UFC, all the way to the UFC, and I think a few other guys he's had signed in the past, but right now his most famous guy is definitely Malcolm. Yexelin has looked better and better every fight. Her last fight was really close. I kind of thought it was closer than the judges thought it was. I probably would have leaned more towards Yex, but she's a phenomenal boxer. I'd like to see her kick more, and she's going to have to try to keep the wrestling off of her, because that was clearly where she struggled in the last fight. So if I'm Kirsten, I'm looking to tie her up along the fence line.
Cool. Now, both these two guys are making their debut. It is Will Trimble and Nevin Petiliano.
Yeah, Nevin, I got to meet at the event I did last weekend in Charlotte, and I know you had done an interview with him talking about his efforts to get a fight on this card. And I remember watching that interview and seeing some of the skits and stuff he was making, and I was like, God, I hope they find a fight for this guy. When you're a bit older guy, it can be really hard to get your first fight. Once you get a couple fights, you start matching up with more older guys. And then if you're small, like 145 or under, it can also be extremely hard to get a fight for your first fight. So these two things combined really worked against Nevin pretty badly. And when I finally saw that they had a fight for him, unfortunately, it was against Will Trimble, who I think I'll talk more about this on fight night. But I don't think there's a person in the game of martial arts who taught me more about myself or helped me grow more as a coach than Will. I was there when Will walked in the door, and he went through a lot over the course of his year training with us outside of the gym. But I could see him take all that stuff from the outside world and turn it into fuel inside the gym. He'd be there when I'd teach my morning class, and then when I was locking up the gym at night, he'd be the last person out the door. And I'll say that he's as scary as they come when he starts fighting. He's a very nice kid, and he's very easygoing and chill, but the second he gets locked in that cage, he becomes like a wild animal. And Nevin's going to have to anticipate a fast start there.
Jordan Bennett and Ahmad Smith.
Yeah, Jordan on our team here at Elevate and has fought kickboxing in the past, making his MMA debut. And he has surprised me a lot this camp in how knowledgeable he is in the grappling realm of MMA. I kind of was a little worried about this matchup at first just because Ahmad's a great grappler, but having watched Jordan in the gym for the last little bit, I think he'll be pretty surprising to people who haven't seen him train. Jordan, Zakia, Ziggy, and Ned all have very similar builds. They all have very similar long guy styles. So I have a lot of experience coaching guys like that, but Jordan is one of the only guys I've seen who's so good at using his length to get inside. And once he gets inside, he surprises me with his ability to chase grappling. So I'm excited to see his debut. I'm excited to corner him.
We got Kim A versus Trey Shepley?
Yeah, Trey Shepley. We talked about Team Rock. Trey's fought on Fight For It a couple times. He's a gamer and a hard guy to like dissuade. He's usually going to be all action. But if there's a fighter, and Kim A, for being a guy with a 4-4 amateur record, my co-commentator Icy Mike, that is his favorite Fight For It fighter. He does not like to watch anybody else more than he likes to watch Kim A. Kim A is one of those guys who will fight you in MMA, and then about halfway through the round, he'll bust out like a Wing Chun move, or he'll do like a jumping tornado kick, and you just got to be kind of like, oh, I watched some videos, so I know this guy can do that, but he can come out of nowhere, and especially early before he gets tired. His kicks are lightning fast. Very, very entertaining guy, and Trey's as rough and gritty as they come for a 125er. So I think that this will be a potential fight of the night stealer, especially for the weight class. Keep your eye on this one.
Perfect. Now we got Brendan Stallis and Pedro Acosta.
Stallis is new, and Greenville Academy of Martial Arts I don't have a ton of experience with. I know that my friend Noah has been over there. I think Noah's on this card as well. Yeah, I see him right there for the title. I know that he's trained over there a good bit. I know they have good coaching over there, but I'm not super familiar with the staff and the work ethic over there. But I can tell you that not a lot of people on this card, it would seem. Modern Warrior, one of the toughest gyms in the area by far. Pedro Acosta, in his last fight, suffered a pretty hard knockout. He got caught like with his mouthpiece kind of like halfway in between his mouth and out of his mouth, so his mouth was open. Out cold type of knockout. It's been quite a while since then, so I'm thinking he's like rested and recovered and ready to go again. And I'm really excited to see like if he can be a little safer. He's always been a strong wrestler, and he's been a fearless striker. But in his last fight, I think he learned what fearlessness buys you if you don't have a plan to go with it.
Yeah. Now, we just had Devin Washington on a little bit ago. He's against Arturo. Thoughts?
Yeah, dude, this is a tough fight. Arturo's an 8-fight veteran, and Devin's fought 5 times in kickboxing. That's it. But Devin wants the hardest fights he can get his hands on, and he'll say yes to nearly anything. And I wasn't kidding when I left that comment. In this fight camp, this is my first fight camp with a large group of these guys, and I don't want to take anything away from anybody else on our team, but I don't think there's anybody right now who's working harder than Devin Washington on that team. I don't think there's anybody who's trying to make a splash in his MMA debut harder than this guy. And the amount of time he's put himself into wrestling rounds with like D1 guys and trying to get caught up to this level before he goes up against a guy with 8 fights. It's been pretty incredible to see. This is an arduous task. This is not something most people would even dream of accepting, but Devin asked for it. Cody said yes, and I'm just the assistant coach, so I'm along for the ride at this point. So Devin's an extremely aggressive striker, and he's going to be trying to get away from the wall, and he's going to be trying to make Arturo panic shoot by putting power on him early. So Arturo's got to keep himself safer than he did against Osvaldo. He's got to be tighter, and he's got to rush to the wall. He's got to really try to lock Devin down before Devin starts getting that timing and that and the power on his shots.
Awesome. Are you going to be in Devin's corner?
Yes, I will be.
Okay. Next one, Stephen Meadows and Fred Nixon. Thoughts?
Stephen Meadows, I think I've met him at a show, but this is his first time fighting at Fight For It. I know Fred Nixon very well. Fred is built like he walked off of the Carolina Panthers football field and into the Fight For It venue. For 215, 205, whatever he's at, he's extremely scary and fast, athletic for a big guy. He moves like a guy I would not expect 215 pounds to do. Carolina Combat Sports, I haven't really talked to them about them on this interview ad nauseum, but to me, they are maybe not right now, data-wise, the most successful gym. I think if you were going pound for pound, fight for fight, you're probably going to see that Modern Warrior has a little bit over them in the last year. But I don't think there's anybody who has a better process of studying opponents and formulating game plans than Tom, the head coach at Carolina Combat Sports. So even against somebody who's a debut, he's like me, where he knows your coaches. He's done enough of these fights to kind of predict what you've been taught. And he's never surprised, in my opinion. So Fred's a great athlete. I think if Fred's had one problem in the past, it's been the cardio. So maybe Steven can have that advantage over him. We'll see. We'll see what Steven brings to the table.
Perfect. Now, next fight at 185, David Harrison and Chris Benton.
Yeah, David, similarly with David as to Fred, very scary. And I've actually had the pleasure of rolling with David at Carolina Jiu-Jitsu Academy. And I rolled with him before and after he fought Noah. And his grappling has come up a ton. I don't know if he wrestled or anything like that in high school, but his jiu-jitsu for MMA and his ability to get sweeps and not be held down, it's on another level. He's fought for Fight Forward a couple times, but he's been extremely active outside of the promotion. And he's going up against Steve Montgomery trained Chris Benton out of American Top Team. And I say this about Asheville all the time. We got somebody from Rogue Combat Club fighting earlier in the night. You would never expect such a small geographical area to have such an incredible amount of fighters. But Asheville is one of those cities where maybe because it's so tucked away, or maybe because it's so up in the woods and nobody really has anything else to do, or who knows what it is, they produce some tough fighters up there. So anytime I see a American Top Team or Rogue Combat Club athlete, I'm thinking, okay, you're going to be very well versed in the Muay Thai, especially the Rogue Combat Club guys. But American Top Team is no joke when it comes to the Muay Thai, and they also have Montgomerys, which are great grapplers. So you're definitely going to be facing a complete athlete from there. And Chris is going to fight like somebody who's needs to make up for a 1-3 record.
Perfect. Now, looking at the card, this one got cut off. Who was it again?
Caleb McRae.
Versus Noah. What's thoughts on that one?
This is going to be a really good fight. Caleb's out of the Elevate corner, and Noah is fighting out of CK MMA, which is in Kannapolis. A lot of the guys who are at CK were formerly with Rowan Wrestling Club or even Hobbs Martial Arts, I think. And now they have this new facility. I've only seen videos of it. It looks beautiful. They got a great coaching staff over there. I know they have a lot of people who win jiu-jitsu competitions. I've seen a lot of their competitors on the podium. So I'm thinking he's going to have really good grappling and really good wrestling. And Caleb, that's his main skill set. I think Caleb's also one of those guys who's kind of always improving, but he's been wrestling or training martial arts of some sort on some level since he was very, very young. So it's kind of like, it's one of those things where this guy's got a little bit more experience and maybe therefore has had more lessons that he's been able to learn. Caleb in his first fight compared to his second fight, I feel like he was suffering from success. Sometimes you can be a little too good and you can take out that first guy and think to yourself, maybe they're all going to be that easy. And then you go against the second guy and he's a wild animal, like Devin is a wild or not Devin, Xavier. Xavier is a bit of a wild animal, but he's also crafty as hell. And so I think Caleb learned a lot of lessons in that Xavier fight last time out. And Noah's going to be a little bit more straight to the point than Xavier. So we'll see how he addresses a more aggressive grappler.
Okay. Now, for the middleweight title, Sam Van Wyn versus Noah.
Yeah, Noah Starowitz, out of that Academy of Martial Arts in Greenville. He's also trained at Arrow. He's trained at Hometown. He will train anywhere people will give him good rounds. And he defeated David Harrison in one of the best Fight For It fights of all time to get this belt. He's been active in APFC, trying to win belts over there. He came up a little short. That's where that one comes from on his record. But this is a guy who, to be such a young kid, he really seems to have what his game plan and what his style is figured out. The thing that he's going to run up against Sam Van Wynen is going to be some incredible jiu-jitsu. I think Sam's really underrated in this regard. Great at taking the back. He's got a mean triangle. He's got a mean armbar. Noah's going to have to hurt him standing and try to make him stand back up. I don't think he'll be trying to pursue him into his guard. Sam's got a really good guard. And that Gym is known for their grappling abilities across the board. So I'm thinking Noah's going to come out high volume and try to keep it standing, try to keep kneeing him, try to keep going to the body over and over again. And this is a 5-rounder. So like I was saying earlier, when you have a fight that long, if it goes that distance, you're going to see a lot of changes round and round. You're going to see a lot of adjustments round and round. That's always what I'm looking for.
Now, the fight that I said should have been the main event. The fight that I think pretty sure everyone's looking forward to. I had both of these guys on for the bantamweight title. Dylan Williams, Osvaldo Gonzalez.
Yeah. This is the one that I look forward to. I would say more than any other fight in Fight For It's history, besides maybe the main event for Raleigh last year with Jonathan and Paris. That fight had a very different intrigue to it. It was mainly about the gyms and their history and these two fighters and where they're going to go next after this fight. This fight is completely different for me. This fight is two people who have proven to us over and over again that they don't know how to be in a boring fight. Like, win or lose, Dylan Williams has never not entertained the shit out of me when he's been in there. Even when he's been on the losing end of some decisions, he's tried to fight till the very last bell. And when he came back from a long layoff and knocked out Javon, and I was not cornering Javon, but I was training a lot with Javon during that time. I knew how deadly Javon was. For Dylan to go out there and hit a Tekken-esque 12-hit combo before Javon even touched the ground, I was like, this is a kid who's got an insanely high skill ceiling. Like I thought I had kind of seen the most out of him, and then he kind of goes up, keeps going up, keeps getting better. The only issue with Dylan is that he's had injuries, he's had issues that have kept him out for long periods of time. And to me, I think for both of these guys, it's their most important fight of their career by far. And for Osvaldo, this is the last thing he feels like maybe he needs to do before he goes pro. Whereas Dylan, this is his legacy. His time as the 135 Fight For It champion is the thing that he is most well known for, and I think it's the thing he takes the most pride in. Like I said, he was with Atlantic when this promotion started, and he was one of their first poster guys. He was the face of Fight For It when I first started, like the early days, the villain, Dylan Williams. And Osvaldo in the last 2 years, comparatively to him, double the activity rate, triple the activity rate. He's slightly younger. He's shorter and not as long as Dylan, but he's so fast and he's so comfortable in the pocket. It's going to be extremely hard for Dylan to find him and touch him, but either one of these guys could knock each other out. I fully believe that.
I'm excited for it. That one I'm just super pumped for.
I can't wait. I really wish the audio was mixed a little better in the last interview Osvaldo did, where I said that is the most electrifying fight, because there have been fights that have been better on paper, but there's been no fight that's been made in my mind in the history of Fight For It where I expected more in terms of fireworks, in terms of action, in terms of volume. So very much looking forward to it along with you, my friend.
I'm not saying we have to make a prediction on this fight. I'm not picking fighters. Do you think it goes the distance?
No.
Okay.
Dylan,
That's all I wanted to know.
Neither. I'll say this in a way that I feel like is kind of as nice as to both guys as possible. And I want you to know that before I say this, I love both of you guys, and I'm very entertained by watching you fight. I don't think either of you guys have a style that would go 5 rounds. I don't think either of you guys would benefit from trying to make this fight go 5 rounds. So I think they're both going to come out and look to end it by round 3.
Ooh, that makes me just so excited for the fight on Saturday.
Because Dylan, I'm going to tell you right now, Dylan's got the best. I think Dylan's the early finisher. Dylan's the guy who can catch you cold before you're really loose and warmed up and get your timing. And he's the guy who can surprise you early with how powerful he is. Because I think everybody sees him, they see his arms, they see his form, and they're like, all right, I'm going to be able to hang with this guy. He can't be that powerful. But then as soon as he starts throwing them straight down the pipe, it's like an immediate physical, almost like a horror movie reaction where I see people like, ugh, I don't want to feel that again. So Osvaldo's a little bit more data oriented. Like the longer the fight goes on, I feel like it benefits him because he's going to be ripping to the body the whole time. And the more chances he gets to hit you on the strong side of the body where the liver is, the worse it gets for you. And you can Dylan's a very tough guy, and you can be a really tough guy when people are punching you in the head, but it's very hard to be a tough guy when you're getting hit in the body and your liver shuts down.
Ugh. All right, we'll slide into pro MMA. Joy Joyner and Cody Noel.
So Raleigh Institute of Martial Arts formerly only really had George Copa. That was kind of their one like fighter, and now they've got this guy Joey. I've not really seen Joey fight, I don't think. If he has fought on Fight For It, I couldn't find a video of it on the fight category or fight library. So, Raleigh Institute of Martial Arts is a big mystery to me. I know they have good striking, and I know that George learned a lot of good grappling from Tommy Gant when they were together, but this is the one I know the least about, frankly. This is the one that I don't know who's been coaching this kid. I don't know what his background is. He may be related to Lucas Joyner, who is also out of Raleigh Institute of Martial Arts and has a black belt under Rima and trains at Elevate, but he's a jiu-jitsu guy. I imagine Joey's probably like his younger brother, maybe. We'll see what happens. I'm predicting some good jiu-jitsu. If he's related to Lucas, he's got good jiu-jitsu. Cody Noel out of Hobbs, I think this is a guy who is extremely accurate with the punches and the kicks, and he just doesn't get phased. Like when he fought Dakota, I remember he got hit with some stuff that I think would take most people out of the game or even take them out of their stance, and he just is like a solid pillar of stone. Very hard to take out of his game plan, very hard to dissuade him from coming forward. I've not really seen too much of him in MMA to know how where his grappling is at, but I know he can strike. He's a hell of a striker.
Perfect. Moving down to the 170. Is it Marshall Atiso?
That's exactly what I would say, my friend. Marshall Atiso versus Mr. Limitless Man, Jameson Thompson. Jameson Thompson's been a fight for it standout since he made his debut. One of the most fun guys to watch, and one of the guys who's gotten so much better as time has gone on from his first fight to this one. The Limitless Man moniker fits him very well. A pro debut for him. I'm excited to see what he can do with it. He beat Brandon Lantos, who I think a lot of people thought Brandon would run through him. And he's up against Marshall from Highest on MMA. I think Marshall may be a bit of a newer comer to that gym. Maybe came in with like an amateur record already established. Haven't seen him on Fight For It, but I know he's from Highest on, which means you can expect extremely high level cage grappling and cage work. Unfortunately for him, that's exactly what Jameson has probably been the best at in the time that I've seen him. So we'll see how that plays out.
Going to the 145, is it Mahid Corbett and Jonathan Nava?
Yeah, Nava is aka Jonathan Flores, out of that True Warrior Fitness gym. He looks so clean in his amateur career, trying to rush to the debut, as I mentioned on commentary last time. With him, it's one of those things where I kind of believe in him when he says he's going to rush to the debut, and here he is. Is he ready? I don't know. We're going to find out. So far, nobody's really been able to stop him or figure him out. Like his coach calls him the war puzzle. I think that's a good identity for him because he's very interesting, very tricky, can switch up his strategy on a dime, can come back between rounds 1 and 2 and look completely different, give you a whole new set of looks. He can fight out of both stances. It's going to be tough. Johnson's going to be tough to deal with. He's one of those guys that I watch and I think to myself, like, well, this guy's pretty special. You're going to have to catch him really cold or you're going to have to really put it on him. You're going to have to earn his respect to get him to stop coming forward, stop putting it on you.
Awesome. The 145, Dante Bazin and Brian Bullock.
Yeah, Dante is the brother of Yexlin Bazin fighting earlier in the night. He's still with Jimmo, not with that gorilla team, unlike Yexlin and Brent. I saw him dislocate his shoulder in a fight last time he was on Fight For It, and he finished 2 rounds with a dislocated shoulder. So extremely tough guy, finally making his MMA debut. I remember very early on, first couple Fight For It shows I did, I was commentating him. So been a long time coming for him, and he's up against the returning Taco Bullock from Carolina Combat. Now, Taco has always been in that corner for the past 7 years. I don't think he's fought in 6 or 7 years. He was doing professional wrestling for a little while, so he's always been in shape, and he's, for a 145er, he's also pretty strong and thick with it. So, like, predict he will rush to the fence wall like most CCS guys do and try to take Bazin down. And Bazin's definitely a guy who I think has good grappling and can get to your back, but is definitely more so way skilled in the boxing and in the pocket.
Okay. Now we got Big Beautiful Banks versus Brett No Luck Williams.
I like both these guys a lot. I like JR when he was an amateur. I loved him as a kickboxer. He's from that American Top Team, which I really like. But Brent, since turning pro and more specifically since signing up with Guerrilla MMA, has looked like a different guy. And I've spoken to him about this in the past. And he said that it wasn't until he hooked up with the coaches at Guerrilla that he felt like he could be himself. He found his fighting style. He found the things he was good at. Like, a coach who can look at you and tell you the things you're good at and make you better at them is one thing, but a coach who will let you do things that they're not super familiar with or super good at themselves, and still they can make you better at it, that's pretty rare. So it would seem like that Guerrilla MMA team has been a huge boon to Brent from the moment he made his pro debut to now. And the last fight I saw of him, it's a very scary 125 prospect. I think this is going to be a pretty interesting fight, and Brent's been asking for and looking for a harder fight for a while, and they're hard to find at 125. So JR ready to make his debut against a 3-0 guy. That's not an easy thing to accept or an easy thing to do, but JR is a gamer. He's been in a lot of fights. He's been in tough battles. And I have no doubts he's able to throw a head kick, which is the big thing in NC. You can head kick at pro compared to amateur. I've seen him throw enough head kicks to know he can catch Brent, but Brent's fast. Brent's main attribute is his speed and his IQ. He's very game plan oriented. I'm interested to see what the game plan is.
Perfect. Now the co-main is Aaron Castro Murrow versus Gustavo Esteban.
Yeah, El Azteca, Aaron Murrow. You know, my friend Seth Stevenson, former Fight For It commentator, main writer, I would say, for a lot of these matchups at Fight For It. He kind of thinks that it will be boxing versus jiu-jitsu, or that Murrow will be trying to keep it standing. I do agree with him. Esteban's been, since he made his pro debut, the fights have been wider, more spread out, but he's also kind of had a reinvention of his own under that Arrow MMA umbrella. Him teaming up with Evan, I think, has been a transformative thing for him. But last time Aaron was out there, he was against Ahmed Kamas, who's a phenomenal grappler and wrestler, and he was able to keep it standing against him. So I don't know what to expect as far as like the matchup playing out, but I can tell you that Gustavo is as good as they come at jiu-jitsu. He's as Brazilian as they make them, and he's as good as they come. And Aaron will need to punish him early. He'll need to rip the boxing early to keep Gustavo off of him and off of his back.
Okay, now leads us into our main event, George Copa and Upright Odama.
Yeah, George Copa, Raleigh Institute of Martial Arts flagship fighter, has been for many years, has the pro experience, has the time experience, has the training experience. His weakness traditionally has always been the grappling, but when he went up against Isaiah Monroe, he looked phenomenal in that regard. Isaiah, however, is no Upright on the wall. I think Isaiah has better submissions and better control, but getting Copa down, he really struggled with. I don't know if Upright is going to struggle the same way to get Copa down. Copa is definitely a strong standing fighter. If you allow him to stand in the center of the ring and throw strikes, he's going to shut you down. But if you can get him on the wall and get him moving and working, I think that's where the success is going to be for Upright. And this is a great main event because Upright's fought as an amateur across the Carolinas for many years now, and he's just now starting to get in his pro debut. This is a guy who was kind of hard to matchmake, and you can see he had to say yes to a guy who's 4-4 to get a fight on this card at 155. 155 is the most competitive weight class for men's pro MMA. It's the average weight of, most American men. So he has to do a lot to stand out against somebody who's seen as much as George Copa has. But Carolina Combat Sports is good at making the fundamentals even more fundamental, even more impactful. They can take the most basic parts and aspects of the game and make them more valuable in the fight. And I think that George Copa is going to have some tricks to stay off the ground and stay off the wall.
Awesome. Now that was the Fight for It card. Dylan, what other thoughts do you have for this card?
I mean, I told this to Jason, our producer. It feels like this is the best show we've done on paper. And it feels like we're pulling the most amount of previous Fight for It fighters back into the mix. And I feel like there's people like you, there's people like Jaden who have kind of attached themselves to this small promotion. And even if you're on Central Time, even if you don't live in the area, you see these names over and over again. You start to remember them. You start to follow their careers. And that's just something that's very rare in amateur MMA or even like pre-UFC level MMA. You don't see a lot of the guys go back over and over again to the same promotion, but it would seem Fight for It is taking care of these guys because they're eager to fight on the shows. They never have a problem getting 40 fights, it would seem, despite, my protesting. But I think that this is just the one that I'm the most excited for since X. I wore the shirt because it was our first show in like 2 years after a pandemic, and it ended up being one of the most fun times I ever had. And I'm getting similar vibes from this show as we go into Fight Week now.
Perfect. Well, Dylan, I appreciate you stopping by and giving us first your take on what got you started into jiu-jitsu and now how you got into commentary and your Fight for It preview.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Thanks for having me on. I hope that your viewers enjoy the interview and the insight into the fights, and I hope that they tune into the fights on Fight Night and see the results play out live with me.
Fans of One T Media Production, do you guys drink coffee? Sure you do. I, myself, drink quite a bit of coffee, so I always turn to a Fuera coffee for my go-to. It's smooth, it's bold, it's not too heavy. Perfect for that early morning or when you just need to lock in for the day. The best part is, at every purchase, 5% goes back to the great outdoors. Get a bag like this. I get two myself. Use promo code MTF and you get 15% off your order. Guys, what's not to love about coffee, free money, and deliciousness? A Fuera coffee.
and odds, that's our deal. From underdogs to favorites, we break it down. Empty field